Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal Software Development and Architecture Podcast. And this is Terraform. This is podcast number 3 in the Terraform series. If you haven't watched the other two, I highly recommend you do so because we're just going to pick up from where we left off. So you'd be better served if you have actually some context to this. Without further ado, let's get going. I'm going to share my screen here. We did a number of things in the previous podcast. It was a week or two before. I don't remember all of it, but I know that we stopped it around here, right? We had looked at the basics of getting set up, and we got as far as importing, an existing resource into uh, the Terraform management, essentially. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to continue. We're going to bring some another resource under Terraform's management, but without using the import block that we did the last time. So let's start running some of these. Let me move this here. Okay, so Nginx latest, it says that's the tag name in here. Just to understand this command, it's pretty straightforward. Let's say if I copied this, that's essentially, you could do an inspect and you're getting the, the image ID. And then you're doing an inspect on that image ID. It's going to spit out a number of things, but what we were actually interested in was just the repo tags. So this command simply does the filter and shows us the repo tag. So it's Nginx latest. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go to docker.tf. I'm going to comment what we had earlier and then comment at this line. Okay, and we're going to do a Terraform apply. Okay, so that went through. We didn't do a Terraform plan because I just ran apply it directly. So it showed us what it was going to do, and it says one resource was added. The resource that's added is this one here, right? So let's keep chugging along. Now that Terraform created a resource for this image, you can reference it in your containers configuration, right? Now let's go to the generated. We have a generated.tf file from the previous podcast. You can look up the previous podcast. Let's actually say Docker container web. There's this image. Change the image value to reference the new image resource. All right. So let's copy this one here. Doesn't that look the same? Let's see. Now that Terraform created a resource for this image, okay. Change the image value for Docker container web to reference that new image resource. Yeah, exactly. Since Docker image latest matches the hardcoded image ID, it's going to return a no op, which I think is what it just did. Right? It didn't have to do any apply here. If the image ID for this changes if it changes between the time you first create the container and when you update the configuration to references, then it's going to destroy it and recreate it with this new image. Right now, it didn't have to do it now. Now you've imported your Docker container's image into Terraform. Destroy the container and image by running destroy. That's the last thing. Okay, let's just do that. What they suggest. It says this is going to be destroyed. Oh, wait, hang on. Unable to remove repository reference. It's container is using its referenced image. No, that's not this container. Oh, yeah. What? Let's do a docker ps-a 99f. We don't have any such container. I've seen this before. Yeah, that doesn't. Well, it appears to have been destroyed. Oh, it says destruction complete. Unable to remove the Docker image. Let's run destroy again. Okay, this is going to be destroyed. It worked this time around. That's a bit strange. Not sure why. I didn't expect to see that error. Um, okay, let's try it one more time. Okay, there is nothing. There's nothing to be destroyed. So I'm not quite sure. If you know what it is it a bug? Is it expected? If so, why? Definitely let us know. So we destroyed the container. Limitations of the considerations, blah blah blah. You can read this at your own leisure. Uh, what did we do here? In this tutorial, we use the configuration driven import to bring a container. You then use Terraform to modify its configuration, blah blah blah. Right. So there's not much here. We like what 5 minutes in. Um, Essentially all that this was doing is instead of using the import command, it was actually doing uh, what did we do? Let me go back here. Yep, we did not use the import command, but used a different way to essentially we brought an existing resource under Terraform's management without using the import block, right? And you could do this the way we did it here. We went to docker dot I'm sorry. We went to Docker TF. I'm just trying to recap what we just did here. Yep, so we can either use the import to do this, or if you don't want to use the import block, this is one more way to do it. And then we just went ahead and destroyed it, so we see nothing here. Now let's go back and undo some of what we did just to bring this back up. So I'm gonna run, and then let's do an inspect. Okay, Docker PS. And then I think it was port 8081. So let's go to 8081 to check that out. No. It's already in use by. Let me actually change this port to 8082 to a Terraform plan. Okay, and then a Terraform apply. Full access denied. On generated.tf file. Yeah, because the image ID here is not going to match. Okay, let's go back here. Download a newer image. Let me take this ID here, place it. Let's go to our command list. Yep, that is that. Hang on, that's not the image ID. That is actually the container. So let me do a Terraform plan. Okay, it says want to add. Let's do something. Let me actually go ahead and delete this generated file. Okay, and then let's go run the command. Actually, I'm going to do this. Let's remove Okay, I think we can try to run this. Docker run, okay, and 801. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. Let's step back and actually Docker remove. We are starting. So this is the this was the current state, and then this is the previous state. Okay, I'm gonna take this Terraform plan. Yeah, I actually want to destroy Terraform plan. Containers using as a reference image. Let's see. Oops. Docker remove. Okay, it looks pretty clean from a Docker standpoint. Yeah, Docker image will be destroyed. Let's see. Let me go back to. Yeah, this is the. Actually, let's clean up this. I'm going to make this resource empty. That might let us get past this problem here. Um, okay, there are no changes, right? So now let's run. Okay, then I'm going to do an inspect. Docker PS. Hit Terraform plan. No changes. Okay, because there aren't any. Okay, cool. Now let's actually go back and do a little bit of what we did earlier. I'm going to say start from a little bit of what we did in the previous podcast because I'm actually forgetting it. I'm going to generate this file that's actually missing. Um, let's take that ID. We need to take that ID and go to docker.tf. Let's just let's do this. When we do Terraform plan, it's going to show. Oh, hang on. Okay, we generated it. We have the generated file here. Can do a little bit of cleanup. I think the env has to be an empty array. I remember it from the last time. Let's see. Yep, there we go. Take that. Clean this up a bit. Okay, and then the image, we'll copy the image ID here from here. Delete everything we don't need. Okay, we've got that. Okay, now let's do the Terraform plan and then apply. Super. That's 8080. So let's go to 8080 and do a sanity check. Yep. Okay, that's Nginx is running. So After that, we can change. This is some of what we did. We can change the port to say 8081. We can do a plan, and then it says it's going to change it, going to apply it, and applied that. So now we can go to 8081, and we see that it is redirecting there. Okay. Um, we've done all of this, and then we'll also do a Terraform show. Right, we see the image ID here, Docker container web, and then it says 8081, right? Um, in this podcast, we start out we ran this command one more time, and then we went to Docker TF, comment out the import, and comment this one. Doing it, let's do a Terraform plan. Right, it says Docker Nginx, that image is going to be created. Okay, we're going to do an apply. We do okay, and then we do a Terraform show. We see that, right? So it actually went through successfully. And then we can destroy the infrastructure, which we did, and it threw an error, and then we ran it one more time. Let's actually see if it's the exact same experience this time around as well. Yep, that has to be a bug. It's quite consistent. I don't know. The first time it fails. So this podcast, we primarily, for the most part, recapped what we did earlier, and a couple of minor issues, sorted that out, started clean again, and went through the process. We sort of jogged our memories on. Let me do this. Stop here. Jogged our memory on what we had actually done with the import block, and now we also tried not using the import block, and checked out, essentially. What did we the first thing we did in this podcast was created the image resource, essentially brought a resource under the Terraform management without using the input block, right? And then we eventually went and did it destroy. We saw the error the first time, and the second time it was working fine. So that's like a quick recap of what we accomplished here. Let me do a screen share again. Okay, let's see what we can do going forward, right? So the first the 3 hours ago, I think 2.5 hours ago, the first podcast was an hour. I think second one was about an hour as well, probably give or take. The third one is a 20 minutes. So 2.5 hours ago, uh, we had little clue about Terraform, its command line, some of its terminologies, jargons and whatnot. I think 2.5 hours later, which is less than half a day, if you will, we have some sense of Terraform, and then we can keep chugging along. The last one was a week or two back, so I actually forget the entire flow. I know we went through different aspects of it. I know we spent a little bit of time understanding, the actual config, like what the TF file is, how the variable substitution works, uh, what this entire construct means, right? Just syntactically, essentially, right? We spent a little bit of time in the second podcast. Going forward to the next steps, let's see. Back, we went through all of this. Yep, we did all of this. Let's go back here. Import Terraform config is what we did. Troubleshooting, managing resource drift, resource lifecycle. There's a number of different things, but rather than poke at it randomly, I actually, want to sort of meaningfully continue from where we are at this point. Maybe we can just try to determine what the next podcast should be about in the series, and then maybe even call this one done quickly. Yeah. These seem pretty random to me in the way they are listed here. Tutorials. Let's go to build infrastructure. What does it say? The AWS build, change, and destroy AWS infrastructure. Actually, this would be good because all of the Snowpal, not all, like a lot of our services are on AWS. we don't use Terraform at this point, right? The whole like the interest behind me looking at this was, between using SAM templates and then Amazon CDK, like Cloud Development Kit, and using Terraform. I want to lean towards going the Terraform route. So let's do versus Terraform. Let's see. Not only is the fact that Terraform works across different cloud providers, in our case, we are primarily only concerned about AWS because that's where most of our services are. Uh, but I think even if you needed it just for one cloud, if you needed it just for one cloud provider, you technically have a choice. You could probably go with whatever your equivalent of, equivalent of Amazon CDK is on Google Cloud or on Azure. Um, but even if you did use one of them more than the other, like we use a lot of AWS services, few and very few Google platform, Google Cloud services at this point of time. Even though that I expect that to increase in 2024, and probably literally one or two services on Azure. Even with that setup, I think Terraform is actually going to be, my hunch is it's actually going to be more convenient, more powerful, more extensible, even when we actually want to work with multiple providers, right? Definitely when you want to work with multiple providers, but even if you did want to work with a single provider like AWS, I have a feeling Terraform is going to bring more value. Maybe we can do a quick. Um, this is quite recent. Um, yeah, I think there is a thread here. Again, probably humor on Y Combinator. Um, which one do you prefer? Terraform can get ugly for large code base. You have a lot of power for actual programming, but CDK is more complicated and learning curve is higher. My preference would be Terraform for small, mid-sized infrastructure and CDK for large ones. That's interesting. But they disappoint in their own ways. Orchestration is a great unsolved problem of the cloud. So maybe it's not as black or white as I earlier stated it. Yeah, I guess it's yeah. CDK is great if you're using only AWS, but documentation sucks. Because that was my hunch, right? If you do want to go across providers, it would be easier. Better probably use something like Terraform. Plus, I think the documentation, AWS has plenty of documentation. Sometimes it's just a little bit too verbose. If you ask me, Terraform's documentation so far, we've only looked it up like the way we do that Snowpal. Like I've said many times before, we don't spend cycles, several hours or days on documentation before we hit the ground running. We get started. Uh, Maybe I can stop sharing for a second. We basically get started, start checking things out, literally like how I'm doing it on the podcast here. Stumble into issues and then learn from there. It's just the way we learn. It doesn't mean that's the best way, the only way to do it. To each our own. But even by doing that, even while doing it, I've noticed we've seen that Terraform's documentation has been quite nice. Actually, it's been quite nice and attractive. Uh, Definitely, at least personal opinion, more so than what I've seen from a CDK documentation standpoint, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. And being able to work across multiple vendors is certainly another. Um, let's close some of these tabs here. Where was I? Oops, I forget. Was there a different tab that we had open? Not really. Okay, let's come back here. Oh yeah, we are here. Getting started. So uh, we could check out more infrastructure as code with Terraform from an AWS standpoint. There are examples here. I think the very first one, what does it say? Build authenticated AWS and create an EC2 instance. This looks actually quite interesting. Only thing I might do is do these two exports before I hop on the podcast, but I will not look at a lot of these other items. I think some of this we actually did touch upon in the very first podcast, now that I remember. So maybe we've done some of this. Yeah, the more I look at it, the more I feel like we've at least done some part of this, if not the whole thing. But we can explore more. So maybe for next time we will actually start with Terraform on AWS. Let's say on podcast number 4 in this Terraform series, we can keep our focus to AWS, and then we can check out maybe Azure, maybe Google Cloud as well, and uh, this Terraform Cloud too. So maybe it wouldn't all of these look as interesting as the other. We can start with one and then keep chugging along. There's like what collectively, what 16, 26, 50 tutorials. We're not going to go all of them 50, but if we did five of them, like 10% of it, I think it'll be good. Like, let's target that. In the next one, in the next podcast, number 4, we will actually get into sort of jog our memories on some of what I think we've done with AWS in the previous one or two podcasts, Terraform from an AWS standpoint. But then we'll continue with the rest of this, right? It says install Terra. We've done this, building infrastructure, changing it, destroying it, defining input variables. You know what? I have a feeling we've actually done. You know what? I remember this one. The variables are TF. So maybe I just forgot what I've done a number of podcasts in the last week and a half. I think we did a Confluent Cloud series as well. At least that's my excuse. So definitely check out the Confluent Cloud series. It was quite interesting. It was like 3 podcasts, or maybe 4 podcasts that go through Confluent Cloud. You know, just manage Kafka as a service and give a good background to all of those things. So that was the crux of the podcast in the last week or so. And then plenty of beautiful collaborations as well with guests who kind enough to agree to show up on the Snowball podcast. And then we'll pick up, uh, you know, uh, from where we've kind of left off with AWS. And if we've done a fair bit of AWS, then we can check out some other cloud providers. So what I'll do is I'll look up uh, quickly what we've done and then just either have a closure on AWS if we've not gone the whole 8 tutorials. But if you've gotten close enough, then we can just skip it, just talk to it really quickly in the next podcast and start looking at maybe Azure, because I know this we have certainly not done at all. So that this will actually be quite fun to do it, right? So we have to install the Azure CLI and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. That's about it. This was uh, kind of a summary-ish podcast, right? We did a couple of new things, but we also went back to what we did earlier. Sort of did a recap for my own selfish interest because I was forgetting some of it, but hopefully it resonated with you to some extent as well. Before I end this one, definitely check out our APIs, our SaaS products on either AWS Marketplace or one of the other hubs, API hubs you're on. If you're spending time building backend systems, you probably shouldn't unless you actually have to. Even if you did have to, then you should focus on only solving your core, very specific customer problems. For all of the generic backend boilerplate heavy lifting, you should leverage our APIs. There's plenty of them. We have thousands of endpoints that should help you get started. And it's domain agnostic. You just need to understand the terminologies, and we are more than happy to help you do the mapping, and then you should be able to hit the ground running. With that, I'm going to end this podcast. Talk to you soon. Thank you.